You know what you're listening to?
Is that a trick question?
It's the I Still Love This Game podcast with your host, Matthew Damian.
He's an idiot. Don't listen to this. He's an idiot.
Good evening, and thank you for that enthusiastic Brooklyn welcome.
Hello and welcome to the I Still Love This Game podcast. Now, the toughest thing about this podcast is actually at least to me, is the introductions. Because as you guys know, I don't write out a script of the show. If I've got multiple topics, then sure, I'll have like dot points or bullet points or whatever, just to remind me of what I want to talk about. But the introduction has always been the most important and challenging aspect to it. But once that gets going, I can talk about hours for any topic that's related to the game of basketball. But that's even more difficult to do today when the topic is the passing of the greatest commissioner that basketball's ever seen. And you can make a really good argument, a really strong argument, about him being the greatest sports commissioner of all time. And of course I'm referring to David Stern, who passed away quite unexpectedly from a brain hemorrhage. Now, it's sad because what we see now in the NBA and what we saw during its heyday, a lot of that had to do with David Stern. But he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. And I'm not even referring to the younger fans who have come up with Adam Silver as a commissioner. I think a lot of fans who watched him in the 80s and 90s, 2000s, they look at him and they attribute a lot of his success to having Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, very, very popular players, Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Shaq, all these guys. And it's like, well, how hard could it have been? But the reality is that's doing a great injustice to David Stern's legacy and to be historically inaccurate as well. So today's show, what I'll be doing is outlining the impact that David Stern directly had to the game of basketball and how it, under his guidance, the league, and this is not an exaggeration, this is not hyperbole, the league went from having tape delays of the NBA Finals. And you guys might think, what does that mean? It means they weren't showing the games live. They were actually tape delayed. They went from that to it being a complete worldwide industry. And if this show is not an example of how this is a worldwide industry, then I don't know what is. And under Stern, it was easily, there's no dispute, it was easily the most marketable of all American sports. And you might be thinking, well, maybe that was just coincidence. Well, not really, because keep in mind, you talk about where the starting point was. Basketball, and especially the NBA, were relatively new sports, new leagues, as opposed to football and as opposed to baseball in America. Now, when Stern came in, he was basically starting at the same time when this information, this technology boom, and accessibility, boom was really happening. So even though the other leagues had head starts on him in terms of culture and things of that nature, Stern really got ahead of the game in terms of the internet and globalism. And the true genius behind David Stern is he didn't wait for the market to create the demand. And he had genuine visions to get in front of that trend and to promote the athletes in the game. Now, I mentioned these guys before, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Their rivalry not only rejuvenated basketball domestically, and we're talking about, obviously the 84 finals, where you can go back a little bit further and how it really started to get people's interests, was, the college, when they played it, and I believe it was a 79 national championship game, Indiana State versus Michigan State. And those are not big markets, by the way. It's not like, we're talking about UCLA versus North Carolina or something like that. We're talking about fairly dormant at that point, at least, college programs. But that was the highest rated basketball game of all time. And before Stern came along, if you do this by a timeline, 79 to 84 is when Stern took over. They still had tape delays. So a 5-year period. So it wasn't just merely David Stern inheriting great talent. He had to know what to do with it. And he knew exactly how to promote the game. And he built the NBA's marketing around those guys. And their rivalry in the NBA, and not only, as I said, not only rejuvenated basketball domestically, but it really captured the imagination of fans around the world. And then along came Jordan, and his creativity, his competitive fire, his all-round brilliance and domination of the sport. These things made the NBA the most popular league, the single most popular league in the world. It was eclipsing English Premier League worldwide. It was eclipsing the NFL worldwide. Now, you could say, well, the NFL was still more popular domestically, and that's fair. We're talking about the US, or the EPL was more popular in Europe, and that's fair too. But when you take into account the entire world, the NBA was the most popular sporting league in the entire world at that time, and that was just not dumb luck. It was more than that. This happened primarily, really, because of the Dream Team in '92, and the three most important players on that team. Even though these were the last games that Larry Bird would play competitively, really the last games that Magic played, even though he came back in '96 for a swan song, and Jordan was at his apex. So you had people tuning in and people watching and their interest for Magic and Bird, but they fell in love with Jordan. And it wasn't just Jordan. It wasn't just these three iconic players. Barkley, Pippen, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing. They all became worldwide, known worldwide, and celebrated worldwide. And it was David Stern who understood the importance on getting these guys on the biggest stage, the Olympics. And with Barcelona being the host city, which is in Spain, obviously, it was no coincidence to see how big the game became in the hotbed of soccer, which was by far and away the, overall in terms of sports. I'm not talking about single league, because obviously you have the Spanish league, you have the Italian league, you have the French league, you have all these leagues, the English league, all competing, obviously, in terms of soccer and popularity. But as an overall game, soccer was still the king, but now basketball was really making strides in terms of popularity in Europe. That was under Stern's vision. And the genius behind it is Stern could have easily said no to this. So a little bit of context, obviously the US lost in the semi-final of the Olympics in '88, and that's when they were still sending amateurs. And Basketball USA wanted to send the pros along. So Stern could have easily said no, and nobody would have faulted him for that. Because he could, these players were NBA assets. They were not Olympians. They were not government funded. And you see what happened with baseball when baseball didn't make allowances or exceptions towards the Olympics when it was a baseball sport. And they ended up hurting it so bad that it was omitted from the Olympics and is no longer played in the Olympics. That could have easily happened with basketball. But what Stern did, he had the foresight and the confidence in what the game could be. And he used that market of the Olympics to promote the game. And history repeated itself when Yao Ming entered the NBA in the early 2000s. Suddenly, Asia became a significant market that was growing, and the NBA jumped out early to capitalize on that well before not just the American sports leagues, but every other sport in the world. Basketball was now a true competitor to soccer in terms of popularity worldwide. It was no longer soccer first, daylight second, third was basketball. It was now soccer first, basketball second, and then daylight between. It's probably cricket is number 3. So the important thing that I want to re-emphasize here is consider where we started in 84. The game was in tape delays, and now it's clearly number 2 and challenging number 1 as the most popular sport in the world, and that is on the back of the NBA. And the players knew it. They all respected Stern, and this might be the most important element of this. He was a fan of the game. You know, he never did things for his own adulation. You know, during Hall of Fame speeches, when he was acknowledged by inductees, he would decline the attention. You know, he enjoyed he reveled in being booed at the draft. But as he said, it was a form of respect. And yeah, there were times where I felt like I wouldn't have made the same decisions if I was in his shoes. The Chris Paul veto comes to mind. You know, let's be honest, he did also oversee 2 lockouts that cost the NBA some games. But he was never perfect, and nobody is. We're always going to have mistakes, and considering that he was a 30-year tenure. And you know, when I said before about how he didn't seek out his own adulation, he could have easily been the most tenured commissioner in North American sports history. But he made sure that he finished up 1 month prior, so he'd be second place, because he just didn't want it. That was never his motivation. He was a true fan of the game, and you cannot argue with the results. The league was never healthier than when he was the commissioner of the NBA. And his, I don't want to say protege, but his successor, Adam Silver, for all the pandering that he has done to the players and the media, he has not experienced anywhere near the same level of success, because it's not authentic. If anything, he's actually hurt the league. It hasn't plateaued off. You see the trajectory under Stern and how much it grew. It's no longer growing. The league is no longer growing. You know, you can pick up tickets for $5 to $10 here in the United States because nobody's going to games anymore. You could not even dream of doing that in the 90s, and I'm not talking about just to see Jordan and the Bulls, or Shaq and on the Lakers or the Magic, or even those blockbuster teams. You know, the NBA was thriving. It was incredible under Stern's tutelage. Under Adam Silver, I hate to say it, but it's getting scary. I wouldn't say it's dying, but it's definitely sick, and it's falling apart. Where it was booming under Stern. You know, we will never see another Larry Bird. We will never see another Magic Johnson or Kobe Bryant or Shaq or Jordan. And we all know that as fans. We'll never see that. Because they were great. And they were individuals. They were genuine. We will also never see another David Stern. You know, the icons of the game. These icons. They are not gods. They are mortal. Do not take them for granted. Because how long will we have Bill Russell for? How long, or Allen Iverson, or a Jordan, or a Magic? These legends, and put Stern's name right up there with them. They are the reason that the NBA was held in such a high regard for such a long time. And David Stern, he's been missed greatly since he retired on a professional level. And he'll be missed even more as a person now that he has passed. And all we can say at this point is rest in peace to I've got no hesitation in saying this, to the greatest commissioner of all time, David Stern.
MVPs, 6 straight scoring titles. You are simply the standard by which basketball excellence is measured. Congratulations.
There's only one player who's won the MVP award in the regular season and the playoffs, twice, and it's my great pleasure to present the Sport Magazine NBA Finals MVP Award to that player for 1986. Congratulations.
There can only be one, and that one is Kobe Bryant, the recipient of the 2007-2008 NBA Most Valuable Player Award presented by Kia. Congratulations. LeBron James, the 2009-10 NBA MVP presented by Kia Motors, his trophy. NBA 2010-11 MVP trophy. Congratulations.
Congratulations to the Lakers, the 1987 NBA World Champions.
Thank you, David.
The greatest winning tradition. You did it with hard work and teamwork. You've earned it. It's yours. Enjoy it.
The repeat MVP, and now this. Congratulations, San Antonio, for your 2003 NBA champion, San Antonio Spurs.